Okay, I created two other videos relating to the impediments of creating a properly functioning logical system or financial report. This is part 3. I got some more information. So if you remember, a properly functioning logical system is the statements that are in the system are consistent. You have a complete set of statements and you have a precise set of statements. So this is what we're talking about. How do you achieve this state where you have a properly functioning logical system? So I provided this comparison of the different states. I'm not going to go over this again. You can see this in the first video. And I want to go over this just to show you what a properly functioning system. So here you have the accounting equation example, which I showed in the first video. And you can see that in this we have assets that equal 5,000, liabilities that equal 1,000, and equity that equals 4,000. And we have a rule, assets equals liabilities plus equity. And it is true that liabilities plus equity equal assets. And therefore we have a consistent set of facts, consistent statements within this logical system. It's complete. There's nothing more that can be added. And if you remove anything, then bad things start happening. And it's precise. It reflects reality. I just made these numbers up, so I don't know, but we're just going to assume that they are the correct numbers. And everything works, okay? So that's the important thing. This is the new version of this diagram. I improved this a little bit. This is the consistent state of this system. And all these other ones were inconsistent. I explained this in the first impediments video. So I want to add a couple of new examples that I've come up with. So the notion of unreported facts, okay, and if you have an unreported fact, then you might require an impute or a derivation rule to be provided within the system. So for example, on the left-hand side, you see that I've reported assets and equity, but not liability. That's why the liabilities is gray, okay? And we have the rule, assets equals liabilities plus equity. But the system doesn't know how to compute the value of liabilities. You may think that it does, but computers are pretty dumb. You have to tell it explicitly, the computer, exactly what to do. So therefore, you can see on the right side, I added a rule that said if assets exist, if assets was reported, and if equity was reported, then liabilities equals assets minus equity. And then you can have all three values, assets, liabilities, and equity. And it's true that assets equals liabilities and equity. So what I'm showing you is that if you allow people using this system to not provide the fact liabilities, then you should provide a rule to the system that specifies that if assets is reported and equity is reported, then liabilities can be imputed, as I'm showing. So this similarly could be done for assets and equity. So if you could leave any one of the two out, then you have to have a rule for each one that could be missing. So the bad side of doing this is that if you don't report all three facts, you lose the parity check or the cross check of comparing assets and liabilities and equity to make sure that they're correct. If you leave or liabilities to be derived, it makes it a little bit more possible that equity or assets could be misstated, and then your system would not work correctly. So I want to point that out. So the next one is extension concepts and providing a general special relation to indicate that another concept is acceptable to be used in replacing some other concept. So, for example, on the left, you see that I've used the concept payables to represent liabilities. And on the right, you see that I added a rule that said that payables is a specialization of the more general term liabilities. So what that tells the computer to do is to say, if I use the term liabilities, it's okay to use that fact in place of liabilities. And that's what it's done, so that you can see that this is a complete, consistent system. Oops, I got a typo there. That should say complete, not incomplete. Because I have the rule, and the computer can derive the value of liabilities from the value of payables. Okay, so that's what a wider, narrower relationship is, or a general special. They're basically the same thing, or very, very similar. And sometimes you can use roll-up relations to serve the same function. Other times you can't. But I'm not going to go into that right now. Okay, in state 8, you see another example. This time, we're using a wider or narrower concept from the base taxonomy. So let's pretend the base taxonomy had the term payables in it. And you have the rule, assets equals liabilities plus equity. And for a computer to understand that payables, the fact payables could be used to represent liabilities, you still have to, in the base taxonomy, have a general special relationship between payables and liabilities to indicate that fact to a computer. So it doesn't really make any difference whether it's an extension or not. If you use a more specialized or more generalized element, the computer has to have information to help it understand what to do. The same thing if you define a new structure. So you see on the left, somebody represented assets, liabilities, and then rather than using the concept equity, they use the concept net assets. Okay, SFAC 6 defines net assets as being equivalent to equity. So what they've done is they've rearranged this structure, you can see on the right-hand side, and they created a liquidation basis balance sheet. Okay, so it needs a new formula, a new rule. Net assets equals assets minus liabilities. And you're using different concepts. So this is basically a new structure. What tends to happen in the US GAAP and the IFRS taxonomy is that they have too many things crammed into, one representation of an income statement or of a balance sheet. And it's very confusing as to what concepts should be used or what concepts are used for what, and that causes people using the taxonomy to make mistakes. So if they would separate this stuff and they don't intermingle different structures of information, it would make it clearer to people that number one, there are structures, and B, the structure A and structure B are separate pieces, and which pieces go with A and which pieces go with B. They separated those out. Anyway, I am going to stop there.